In the bustling heart of New York City, where dreams were sown and hopes unraveled with each passing second, lived Sophia Martinez, a young woman with nimble fingers and a heart full of aspirations. At just 22, Sophia's life was a tapestry of hardship and determination, each thread woven with the resilience that only those born into struggle truly understand. Sophia's tiny apartment in the Bronx was a far cry from the glittering fashion houses of Manhattan, but it was here, in this cramped space barely large enough for a bed and a sewing machine, that magic happened. Night after night, she would sit hunched over her trusty singer, the whirring of its needle a lullaby to her dreams of grandeur. One day, she would whisper to herself, her voice barely audible over the rhythmic clacking of the machine, "One day, they'll see. They'll all see." But for now, Sophia was invisible. A ghost in the grand narrative of New York fashion, she existed only in the shadows of the industry she so desperately longed to join. By day, she worked as a lowly assistant at Glamour and Grace, one of the city's most prestigious fashion houses. Her duties? Fetching coffee, organizing fabric swatches, and bearing the brunt of her boss's mercurial moods. Victoria Blackwood, the owner of Glamour and Grace, was a woman whose beauty was matched only by her cruelty. With hair as black as her surname and eyes that could freeze hellfire, Victoria ruled her fashion empire with an iron fist encased in a silk glove. "Sophia!" Victoria's voice cracked like a whip across the bustling atelier one fateful morning. She never bothered to pronounce Sophia's name correctly. Sophia scurried over, her heart pounding. "Yes, Ms. Blackwood?" Victoria's lips curled into a sneer as she looked Sophia up and down, taking in her simple, handmade dress with undisguised disdain. "I need you to stay late tonight. The Hunter show is in 2 days, and we're behind schedule." Sophia's heart sank. Tonight was supposed to be her night off, the night she had planned to work on her own designs. But she knew better than to argue. "Of course, Ms. Blackwood. I'll be here as long as you need me." Victoria's laugh was cold and sharp. "As if I'd ever need you, Sophia. You're here to serve, nothing more. Don't forget your place." The words stung, but Sophia forced a smile. "Yes, Ms. Blackwood. Is there anything else?" "Yes, actually," Victoria mused, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "Since you'll be here anyway, you can clean out the storage room. It's a mess, and quite frankly, it's a job suited for someone of your caliber." Sophia nodded, biting back the tears that threatened to spill. She turned to go, but Victoria's voice stopped her once more. "Oh, and Sophia? Do try not to touch any of the good fabrics. We wouldn't want your common hands to ruin them, would we?" The day dragged on, each minute an eternity of small humiliations and biting remarks. Sophia endured it all with a quiet dignity that only seemed to infuriate Victoria more. As the sun set and the rest of the staff filed out, Sophia found herself alone in the cavernous atelier, surrounded by half-finished gowns and the ghosts of her own deferred dreams. With a heavy sigh, she made her way to the storage room. It was a cluttered space, filled with outdated mannequins, bolts of forgotten fabric, and boxes upon boxes of discarded designs. As she began to sort through the chaos, her mind wandered to her own creations, sketches hidden away in a tattered notebook, dreams committed to paper in stolen moments between errands and insults. Hours passed, and Sophia lost herself in the task. As she pushed aside a particularly heavy box, something caught her eye, a glint of gold in the dim light. Curious, she reached out, her fingers closing around cool metal. It was a scissors, unlike any she had ever seen before. The blades were wickedly sharp, the handles inlaid with intricate designs of flowers and vines. As she held it, a strange warmth spread through her hands, as if the scissors themselves were alive. "What are you doing in here?" Sophia whirled around, her heart in her throat. There, framed in the doorway, stood Jackson Hunter, heir to the Hunter fashion empire and Victoria's on-again, off-again lover. His steel gray eyes narrowed as they fell on the scissors in Sophia's hand. I was just cleaning, Mr. Hunter, Sophia stammered, quickly setting the scissors down. Ms. Blackwood asked me to organize the storage room. Jackson stepped into the room, his gaze never leaving Sophia's face. Did she now? And did she also ask you to help yourself to company property? No. I would never. Save it, Jackson cut her off, his voice cold. I know your type, Sophia. Always wanting more than you deserve. Well, let me make something very clear to you. This world, he gestured around them, encompassing not just the room but the entire fashion industry beyond, it's not for people like you. It never will be. Sophia felt something inside her crack at his words. All the hurt, all the humiliation of the past years, came rushing to the surface. You're wrong, she whispered, her voice gaining strength with each word. You're all wrong about me. I have talent, I have vision, and one day. Jackson's laughter cut her off, sharp and mocking. One day what? You'll be the toast of Fashion Week? Please. You're nothing more than a glorified maid with delusions of grandeur. Know your place, Sophia. It's all you'll ever be good for. With that, he turned on his heel and stalked out of the room, leaving Sophia alone once more. But this time, something was different. As she stood there, surrounded by the detritus of other people's dreams, she felt a fire ignite within her. She picked up the golden scissors once more, their weight comforting in her hand. They're wrong, she whispered to herself, her voice steady and sure. And I'll prove it to them all. Little did Sophia know, her words were more than just empty bravado. For in that moment, in that dusty storage room with those mysterious scissors in hand, the threads of fate began to shift. A tapestry of destiny was being rewoven, and Sophia Martinez, the invisible girl, the nobody from the Bronx, was about to become its central figure. As she left glamour and grace that night, the city seemed different somehow. The neon lights burned brighter, the air hummed with possibility, and for the first time in years, Sophia felt truly alive. She clutched her bag close, the golden scissors safely tucked away inside, a secret talisman of the revolution to come. But revolutions are never easy, and the path ahead would be fraught with betrayal, heartbreak, and challenges that would test the very fabric of Sophia's being. For in the world of high fashion, dreams come with a price, and Sophia was about to learn just how high that price could be. As she walked home through the rain-slicked streets of New York, Sophia had no way of knowing that her life was about to change forever. The wheels of fate were already in motion, set spinning by a pair of golden scissors and the unshakable determination of a girl who refused to be invisible any longer. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm brewing in Sophia's heart. She arrived at glamour and grace earlier than usual, her mind racing with plans and possibilities. The golden scissors were tucked safely in her bag, a constant reminder of the previous night's revelation. As she entered the atelier, she was immediately struck by an unusual buzz of activity. Designers and assistants scurried about, their faces etched with panic. In the center of it all stood Victoria, her usually perfect composure cracking under the weight of some unseen pressure. "What do you mean, she quit?" Victoria's voice carried across the room, sharp with disbelief and rage. "The show is tomorrow night. We can't possibly." She broke off as she noticed Sophia, her eyes narrowing dangerously. "You. Come here. Now." Sophia approached cautiously, her heart pounding. "Yes, Ms. Blackwood?" Victoria's gaze was calculating as she looked Sophia up and down. "Our lead model has decided to abandon us on the eve of the most important show of the season. Apparently, the Hunter family made her a better offer." The bitterness in her voice was palpable. Sophia's mind raced. The lead model quitting right before a major show was fashion suicide. No wonder everyone was in a panic. I need you to call every agency in the city, Victoria continued, her words clipped and precise. Find me a replacement. Someone stunning, someone unforgettable. Our entire fall line depends on this show, do you understand? Sophia nodded, already reaching for her phone. But as she began to dial, a wild, impossible idea took root in her mind. Before she could think better of it, the words tumbled out of her mouth. What if I modeled the dress? The silence that followed was deafening. Every eye in the atelier turned to stare at Sophia, expressions ranging from shock to pity to outright derision. Victoria's face, however, was a mask of cold fury. You, she hissed, her voice dripping with contempt. Model my designs? Have you lost what little mind you possess? Sophia felt her cheeks burn with humiliation, but she stood her ground. I know every piece in the collection by heart. I've watched the rehearsals, I know the choreography. And Enough! Victoria's shout echoed through the room. You insolent, delusional girl. How dare you even suggest such a thing? You are nothing, do you hear me? Nothing but a nameless, talentless nobody who should be grateful for the crumbs I've allowed you to gather at my feet. Each word was a dagger, but Sophia refused to flinch. She met Victoria's gaze steadily, even as tears threatened to spill from her eyes. Victoria's lip curled in disgust. Get out of my sight. And if you can't find me a suitable model by noon, don't bother coming back at all. Sophia turned and fled, ignoring the whispers and snickers that followed her. She ran until she reached the small supply closet where she usually ate her lunch, closing the door behind her and sinking to the floor. For a moment, she allowed herself to cry, to feel the full weight of the humiliation and rejection. But as her fingers brushed against her bag, feeling the outline of the golden scissors within, a strange calm settled over her. She pulled out her sketchbook, filled with designs she had never dared to show anyone. As she flipped through the pages, an idea began to form, wild, dangerous, and utterly irresistible. If they wouldn't let her model the dress, she would make her own. A dress so spectacular, so breathtaking, that it would make Victoria Blackwood eat her words. A dress that would make the entire fashion world sit up and take notice. With trembling hands, Sophia reached for the golden scissors. As she held them, she felt that same strange warmth from the night before, as if the scissors themselves were urging her on. I'll show them, she whispered, her voice steady and sure. I'll show them all. And with that, Sophia began to cut, the golden blades slicing through fabric with an ease that seemed almost magical. She worked feverishly, losing all track of time as her vision took shape beneath her fingers. Hours passed, and the dress began to emerge, a creation of such stunning beauty that it seemed to glow with an inner light. Sophia poured every ounce of her talent, her pain, her dreams into every stitch. As she worked, she was unaware of the eyes watching her from the shadows. Jackson Hunter stood silently in the doorway, his expression unreadable as he observed the transformation taking place before him. Finally, as the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky, Sophia stepped back to survey her work. The dress was complete, a masterpiece of silk and starlight, of dreams made tangible. With shaking hands, she slipped it on, gasping as the fabric seemed to mold itself to her body. She turned to the small mirror on the wall, and for a moment, she didn't recognize the woman staring back at her. Gone was the invisible assistant, the girl everyone overlooked. In her place stood a vision of grace and elegance, a true goddess of fashion. Sophia took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. It was time. Time to step out of the shadows and into the spotlight. Time to show the world who she truly was. As she opened the door, she came face to face with Jackson. His eyes widened as he took in the sight before him, all traces of his earlier contempt vanishing in an instant. "Sophia," he breathed, his voice filled with awe. "What have you done?" Sophia met his gaze steadily, her chin lifted in defiance. "I've done what you all said I couldn't. I've made my dreams real." For a long moment, Jackson said nothing. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face, not the cold, mocking smirk she was used to, but something genuine and warm. "Come with me," he said, holding out his hand. "There's someone you need to meet." Sophia hesitated for just a moment before taking his hand. As they walked through the now empty atelier, she could feel the weight of destiny settling around her shoulders. Whatever happened next, she knew with absolute certainty that her life would never be the same again. The invisible girl was gone, and in her place stood a woman ready to take on the world. As they approached Victoria's office, Sophia's heart raced with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. This was it, the moment that would define her future. She took a deep breath, steadying herself for whatever lay ahead. Jackson knocked on the door, and Victoria's irritated voice called out, "Enter." As they stepped inside, Victoria's eyes widened in shock, her gaze traveling from Sophia's radiant face to the breathtaking dress she wore. For a moment, the usually composed fashion mogul was speechless. "What is the meaning of this?" Victoria finally managed, her voice a mixture of anger and, was that a hint of admiration? Jackson stepped forward, his hand still holding Sophia's. "Victoria, I think we've found our new lead model." Victoria's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Have you lost your mind, Jackson? This is Sophia, our coffee girl. She can't possibly." "Look at her," Jackson interrupted, his voice firm. "Really look at her, Victoria. This dress, it's unlike anything we've ever seen. And she made it herself, in a matter of hours." Victoria circled Sophia slowly, her expert eye taking in every detail of the dress. Sophia stood tall, refusing to shrink under the scrutiny. "Is this true?" Victoria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Did you really make this?" Sophia nodded, finding her voice at last. "Yes, Ms. Blackwood. I did." A long, tense silence followed. Then, to everyone's surprise, Victoria laughed, a genuine, almost delighted sound. "Well, Sophia," she said, a hint of respect creeping into her voice. "It seems I may have underestimated you. This dress, it's exquisite. But can you walk in it? Can you command a runway?" Sophia's chin lifted, a fire burning in her eyes. "Give me a chance, Ms. Blackwood. I'll show you what I can do." Victoria considered for a moment, then nodded sharply. "Very well. You have one shot, Sophia. Don't waste it." As Victoria swept out of the room to make the necessary arrangements, Sophia felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. She had done it, she had earned her chance. But now came the real test. Jackson squeezed her hand gently. "You've got this, Sophia. I believe in you." Sophia looked up at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "Why are you helping me?" His smile was tinged with sadness. "Because I was wrong about you. We all were. And it's time to make that right." The next few hours passed in a whirlwind of activity. Sophia found herself swept up in a flurry of fittings, rehearsals, and last-minute adjustments. The entire atelier was abuzz with excitement and trepidation. After all, the fate of glamour and Grace's fall line now rested on the shoulders of a girl who, just yesterday, had been nothing more than a coffee fetcher. As the sun began to set over the New York skyline, casting a golden glow through the atelier's expansive windows, Sophia stood before a full-length mirror, barely recognizing the woman who stared back at her. The dress she had created seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly light, its intricate patterns catching and refracting every beam of sunlight that touched it. Victoria circled her like a shark, her critical eye taking in every detail. "Remember, Sophia," she said, her voice uncharacteristically gentle, "when you step onto that runway, you're not just wearing a dress. You're embodying a dream, my dream, your dream, the dreams of every person who has ever picked up a needle and thread with the hope of creating something beautiful." Sophia nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "I understand, Ms. Blackwood. I won't let you down." For a moment, something like warmth flickered in Victoria's eyes. But before Sophia could be sure, it was gone, replaced by the fashion mogul's usual steely determination. "See that you don't," Victoria said crisply, turning on her heel and striding away. As the final preparations were made, Sophia found herself alone for a moment, hidden away in a quiet corner of the backstage area. She closed her eyes, taking deep breaths to calm her racing heart. This was it, the moment she had dreamed of for so long. The chance to prove to everyone, including herself, that she was more than just a nameless face in the crowd. Nervous? Sophia's eyes flew open to find Jackson standing before her, a gentle smile on his face. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Jackson reached out, taking her hands in his. "Listen to me, Sophia," he said, his voice low and urgent. "What you've done, what you're about to do, it's incredible. But I need you to know something." Sophia looked up at him, her eyes wide. "What is it?" Jackson's gaze was intense, filled with an emotion Sophia couldn't quite name. "My family, the Hunters, they're not just rivals to glamour and grace. They're dangerous. If you go out there tonight and succeed, if you become the star I know you can be, they'll come after you. They'll try to use you, to control you." Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. "Why are you telling me this?" Jackson's grip on her hands tightened. "Because I care about you, Sophia. More than I should. And because I want you to be prepared. Whatever happens out there tonight, promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you won't let anyone, not Victoria, not my family, not even me, take advantage of your talent." For a moment, Sophia was speechless. The world of high fashion had always seemed glamorous from the outside, but now she was beginning to see the darker currents that ran beneath its glittering surface. She took a deep breath, steeling herself. "I promise, Jackson. Thank you for warning me." He nodded, relief evident in his eyes. Then, before Sophia could react, he leaned in and pressed a soft, swift kiss to her cheek. "For luck," he whispered, and then he was gone, leaving Sophia standing alone, her skin tingling where his lips had touched. There was no time to dwell on what had just happened, though. A stagehand appeared, ushering Sophia to her place in line. The show was about to begin. As she stood there, waiting for her cue, Sophia could hear the buzz of the crowd beyond the curtain. The who's who of the fashion world had gathered to witness glamour and Grace's fall collection, and now, unwittingly, to witness the debut of a new star. The music began, a pulsing, hypnotic beat that seemed to sync with Sophia's own racing heart. One by one, the models ahead of her disappeared through the curtain, each met with polite applause and the rapid-fire clicks of cameras. And then, suddenly, it was her turn. "Remember," Victoria's voice hissed in her ear, "you're not just wearing the dress. You are the dress." With those words ringing in her ears, Sophia took a deep breath and stepped out onto the runway. The bright lights hit her like a physical force, momentarily blinding her. But as her eyes adjusted, she became aware of a sudden hush falling over the crowd. For a heartbeat that seemed to last an eternity, there was absolute silence. And then, like a wave crashing against the shore, the reaction began. Gasps of awe rippled through the audience. Camera flashes erupted like 1,000 stars, each desperate to capture the vision before them. And as Sophia began to walk, her steps sure and graceful, she could hear the whispers spreading like wildfire. "Who is she? That dress, I've never seen anything like it. Is this some kind of hologram? It can't be real." But it was real. Every step Sophia took seemed to make the dress come more alive. The intricate patterns she had woven into the fabric caught the light, creating the illusion that she was walking through a field of stars. The silk flowed around her like water, each movement revealing new facets of its beauty. As she reached the end of the runway, Sophia paused, allowing the audience a moment to drink in the full effect of her creation. She could see the front row, filled with the most influential names in fashion, their eyes wide with disbelief and desire. And there, in the center, sat Evelyn Hunter, Jackson's mother and the matriarch of the Hunter fashion empire. Evelyn's face was a mask of calculated indifference, but Sophia could see the hunger in her eyes. It was the look of a predator who had just spotted its next meal. With a graceful turn, Sophia began her walk back. As she neared the curtain, she caught sight of Victoria standing in the wings. The fashion mogul's face was a study in conflicting emotions, pride, amazement, and just a hint of fear. As Sophia disappeared backstage, the spell was broken. The audience erupted into thunderous applause, their cheers echoing through the venue. She had done it. She had taken their breath away. But there was no time to celebrate. The show wasn't over, and Sophia had 3 more outfits to model. Each one was met with the same rapturous response, but nothing could compare to the impact of that first dress, her dress. As the final chords of music faded and Victoria took her bow to a standing ovation, Sophia found herself swept up in a whirlwind of congratulations and questions. Designers, models, and assistants alike crowded around her, each eager to bask in the glow of the night's newest star. "Sophia!" Victoria's voice cut through the chaos like a knife. "Come with me. Now." Sophia followed Victoria to a quiet corner, her heart pounding. Was this it? The moment when her dream would be snatched away? But when Victoria turned to face her, there were tears in the older woman's eyes. "You did it, girl," she said softly. "You saved us all." Before Sophia could respond, Victoria pulled her into a tight embrace. "I was wrong about you," she whispered. "So very wrong. And I'm sorry." Sophia felt her own eyes fill with tears as she returned the hug. For so long, she had yearned for Victoria's approval, and now, finally, she had it. But as they pulled apart, Victoria's expression turned serious. "Listen to me carefully, Sophia. What you did tonight, it's going to change everything. The fashion world will never be the same, and neither will you. Are you ready for that?" Sophia took a deep breath, thinking of Jackson's warning, of the hunger she had seen in Evelyn Hunter's eyes. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I'm willing to try." Victoria nodded, a hint of her old sharpness returning. "Good. Because starting tomorrow, your real work begins. We're going to take that dress of yours and turn it into a collection that will make fashion history. And you, my dear, are going to be the face of it all." As Victoria swept away to deal with the press, Sophia found herself alone for a moment. She closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the enormity of what had just happened. In the space of a single night, her entire life had changed. Sophia. She turned to find Jackson standing behind her, his eyes shining with pride and something else, something that made her heart skip a beat. "You were incredible," he said softly. "I've never seen anything like it." Sophia smiled, a blush creeping up her cheeks. "Thank you, Jackson. For everything." He stepped closer, his hand reaching out to touch her face. "Sophia, But before he could finish, a cold voice cut through the moment like ice. Well, what do we have here? Evelyn Hunter stood before them, her glacial beauty a stark contrast to the warmth Sophia had just been feeling. Jackson immediately stepped back, his face hardening into a mask of indifference. "Mother," he said coolly. "I didn't expect to see you here." Evelyn's laugh was like tinkling glass, beautiful, but with sharp edges. "Did you really think I'd miss the debut of Glamour and Grace's new star?" Her gaze raked over Sophia, assessing and calculating. "You must be the girl everyone's talking about." "Sophia, isn't it?" Sophia straightened her spine, meeting Evelyn's gaze squarely. "It's Sophia, actually. Sophia Martinez." "Charming," Evelyn purred, though her eyes remained cold. "Well, Sophia Martinez, it seems you've made quite an impression tonight. I wonder, have you given any thought to your future in this industry?" Before Sophia could respond, Victoria appeared at her side, her arm wrapping protectively around the young designer's shoulders. "Sophia's future is with Glamour and Grace, Evelyn. So you can take your claws elsewhere." Evelyn's smile never wavered, but Sophia could see the anger flashing in her eyes. "Now, Victoria, don't be hasty. I'm sure Sophia here would like to explore all her options. After all, the Hunter name carries quite a bit of weight in our world." Sophia felt caught in the crossfire of two titans, each battling for control of her destiny. But as she stood there, she remembered the feeling of creating that dress, of bringing her vision to life with nothing but her own two hands and a pair of golden scissors. She thought of all the nights she had spent dreaming of this moment, of proving to the world, and to herself, that she was more than just a nobody from the Bronx. With a deep breath, she stepped forward, gently extricating herself from Victoria's grip. "Thank you for your interest, Mrs. Hunter," she said, her voice steady and clear. "But I think I'll make my own decisions about my future." For a moment, silence reigned. Then Evelyn laughed, a sound of genuine amusement this time. Well, it seems our little seamstress has some fire in her after all." "Very well, my dear. But remember, in this world, you're either a hunter or you're prey. Choose wisely." With that, she turned and glided away, leaving a wake of whispers and stares in her path. Jackson looked at Sophia, a mixture of admiration and concern in his eyes. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Sophia nodded, though her heart was racing. "I think so." But Jackson, what did she mean? About being a hunter or prey? Jackson's expression darkened. "It's an old saying in our family. It means that in the fashion world, you're either on top or you're nothing. And the hunters, we've always been on top." Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. "And now?" "Now," Jackson said, his voice low and intense, "now you've changed the game. And I'm not sure any of us know what's going to happen next." As if on cue, a swarm of reporters descended upon them, each clamoring for an exclusive with the night's breakout star. Sophia found herself swept away in a tide of questions and camera flashes, her mind spinning with the implications of everything that had just happened. But even as she smiled for the cameras and gave her first interviews, a part of her couldn't help but wonder, in this world of hunters and prey, which one was she? And more importantly, which one did she want to be? The days that followed the show were a whirlwind of activity. Sophia found herself thrust into a world she had only ever dreamed of, navigating photo shoots, interviews, and endless meetings with potential buyers and collaborators. Her face was suddenly everywhere, on billboards, in magazines, splashed across social media with hashtags proclaiming her the next big thing in fashion. Through it all, Victoria remained a constant presence, guiding Sophia through the treacherous waters of sudden fame with a mixture of hard-nosed practicality and unexpected warmth. Remember, she would say, her voice sharp but not unkind, they love you now, but this industry is fickle. We need to strike while the iron is hot. And strike they did. Within weeks, plans were underway for a full collection based on Sophia's revolutionary design. The atelier buzzed with a new energy, with Sophia at the center of it all, her creativity flowing like never before. But even as her star rose, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. There were whispers in corners, meaningful glances exchanged when people thought she wasn't looking. And always, the specter of the Hunter family loomed large. Evelyn Hunter, true to form, had not given up easily. Barely a day went by without some new offer arriving at Glamour and Grace, exclusive contracts, collaborations, even a blank check with the Hunter logo embossed in gold. Each time, Victoria would sweep the offers into the trash with a snort of disgust. Vultures, she'd mutter. They smell success and they want to devour it. But Sophia couldn't help but wonder, what if the Hunters could offer her something Glamour and Grace couldn't? The thought nagged at her, a persistent itch she couldn't quite scratch. And then there was Jackson. In the weeks since the show, he had become a constant in Sophia's life, always there with a supportive word or a steadying hand. She found herself looking forward to their moments together, cherishing the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't noticing. But there was a tension there too, an unspoken something that hung between them like a gossamer thread, delicate and dangerous. Sophia knew that any relationship with Jackson would be complicated at best, disastrous at worst. He was, after all, still a hunter. It was on a rare quiet evening, as Sophia sat alone in the atelier long after everyone else had gone home, that everything changed. She was sketching idly, her mind wandering through possibilities for her next design, when she heard a noise, soft but unmistakable in the silence of the empty building. "Hello?" she called out, her heart suddenly racing. "Is someone there?" For a long moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, from the shadows, a figure emerged, tall, elegant, and unmistakably dangerous. Evelyn Hunter stood before her, a smile playing at the corners of her perfect lips. "Good evening, Sophia," she purred. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Sophia stood quickly, her sketchpad falling forgotten to the floor. "Mrs. Hunter," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "How did you get in here?" Evelyn's laugh was like silk sliding over steel. "Oh, my dear. When you've been in this business as long as I have, you learn that there are very few doors that remain closed to you." She moved closer, her eyes never leaving Sophia's face. "But let's not waste time on trivialities. I came here to talk to you, Sophia. Just you." Sophia felt her mouth go dry. "About what?" "About your future, of course." Evelyn's voice was soft, almost hypnotic. "You've made quite a splash, my dear. But surely you must realize that your time at Glamour and Grace is limited." "What do you mean?" Sophia asked, even as a part of her dreaded the answer. Evelyn's smile widened, showing just a hint of teeth. "Victoria is many things, my dear, but a nurturer of talent is not one of them. She will use you up, squeeze every ounce of creativity from you, and then discard you when the next big thing comes along. It's what she does. It's what this entire industry does." Sophia felt a chill run down her spine, but she stood her ground. "You're wrong about Victoria. She believes in me." "Oh, I'm sure she does. For now." Evelyn moved closer, her perfume enveloping Sophia in a cloud of expensive scent. "But ask yourself this, Sophia, where will you be in a year? In 5 years? Do you really think Victoria Blackwood, of all people, will still be championing you then?" The words hit Sophia like a physical blow. She had been so caught up in the whirlwind of her sudden success that she hadn't allowed herself to think too far into the future. Now, faced with Evelyn's cold logic, doubt began to creep in. Evelyn seemed to sense her uncertainty. Her voice softened, becoming almost maternal. "I'm not here to frighten you, my dear. Quite the opposite, in fact. I'm here to offer you a choice, a real choice, not the illusion of one that Victoria has given you." "What kind of choice?" Sophia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Join us," Evelyn said simply. "Become a hunter. We can offer you resources beyond your wildest dreams, a platform that will ensure your designs are seen and celebrated around the world. With us, you'll never have to worry about being yesterday's news. You'll be a legend." For a moment, Sophia allowed herself to imagine it. The Hunter name was synonymous with fashion royalty. With their backing, there would be no limit to what she could achieve. Her designs could revolutionize the industry, change the very face of fashion itself. But then she thought of Victoria, of the faith she had shown in Sophia when no one else would. She thought of the long nights in the atelier, of the camaraderie she had found with her fellow designers at Glamour and Grace. And she thought of Jackson, sweet, conflicted Jackson, caught between two worlds. I need time to think," Sophia said finally. Evelyn nodded, her expression unreadable. "Of course. This isn't a decision to be made lightly." She reached into her purse and withdrew a small, embossed card. "When you're ready to talk, really talk, call this number. Day or night, I'll answer." As Evelyn turned to leave, she paused, looking back over her shoulder. "Oh, and Sophia? Do be careful with my son. His heart is more fragile than he lets on." With that, she was gone, leaving Sophia alone in the suddenly too quiet atelier. The young designer sank into a chair, her mind reeling. She looked down at the card in her hand, the Hunter logo gleaming in the low light. It felt heavy, weighted with possibility and danger in equal measure. For a long time, Sophia sat there, torn between two futures, the one she had dreamed of for so long, and one she had never dared to imagine. As the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows, she made her decision. The next few weeks were a blur of activity as Sophia threw herself into her work with renewed passion. If Victoria noticed anything different about her protégée, she didn't mention it. Instead, she matched Sophia's intensity step for step, pushing her to greater heights of creativity. Together, they began to craft a collection that would make Sophia's debut seem like a mere prelude. Each piece was a work of art, infused with the same magic that had made her first dress so captivating. But there was something more now, a depth, a maturity that spoke of lessons hard-learned and wisdom dearly bought. Through it all, Jackson remained a constant presence, his support unwavering even as the tension between them grew. Sophia could see the question in his eyes every time they were together, could feel the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. But neither of them seemed able to bridge the gap, to give voice to the feelings that simmered just beneath the surface. As the date of the new collection's debut drew near, the pressure began to mount. The fashion world was abuzz with anticipation, eager to see if Sophia Martinez could deliver on the promise of her spectacular debut. Magazines clamored for interviews, buyers from around the world jockeyed for front-row seats at the show. And still, Evelyn Hunter's card burned a hole in Sophia's pocket, a constant reminder of the choice that lay before her. It was the night before the big show when everything came to a head. Sophia was working late in the atelier, making last-minute adjustments to her centerpiece design, a gown that she hoped would eclipse even her first creation. The atelier was quiet, the usual bustle of activity replaced by an anticipatory hush. As she worked, Sophia became aware of a presence behind her. She turned to find Jackson standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "Hey," she said softly, her heart racing. "What are you doing here so late?" Jackson stepped into the room, his eyes never leaving her face. "I needed to see you," he said, his voice low and intense. "Before tomorrow. Before everything changes." Sophia felt a lump form in her throat. "Jackson, I..." But before she could finish, he was there, closing the distance between them in 2 quick strides. His hands cupped her face, gentle but insistent, and then he was kissing her with a passion that took her breath away. For a moment, Sophia lost herself in the kiss, in the feeling of Jackson's arms around her, in the rightness of it all. But then reality came crashing back, and she pulled away, her heart pounding. "We can't," she whispered, even as every fiber of her being screamed for her to do just the opposite. "Your mother." "Forget my mother," Jackson said fiercely. "Forget the hunters, forget glamour and grace, forget all of it. Sophia, I love you. I think I've loved you since the moment I saw you in that storage room, holding those golden scissors like they were the key to the universe." Sophia felt tears prick at her eyes. "Jackson, please. You don't understand. Your mother, she came to see you," Jackson finished, his voice flat. "I know. She told me." Sophia's eyes widened in shock. "She, what?" Jackson's laugh was bitter. "Oh yes. She was quite proud of herself, actually. Thought she had pulled off quite the coup, turning the rising star of glamour and grace to the hunter side. But I didn't," Sophia began, only to be cut off by Jackson's raised hand. "I know," he said softly. "I know you didn't accept her offer. But the fact that she made it, that she thought she could buy you like that, it made me realize something." "What?" Sophia asked, barely daring to breathe. "That I don't want to be a part of that world anymore," Jackson said, his voice gaining strength with each word. "The manipulations, the backstabbing, the constant jockeying for position, I'm done with all of it. I want out, Sophia. And I want out with you." For a moment, Sophia could only stare at him in disbelief. "But your family, your legacy, mean nothing if I can't be with the woman I love," Jackson finished. He took her hands in his eyes burning with intensity. "Sophia, we could do this. Together. Start our own label, make our own rules. No more hunters, no more glamour and grace. Just us, creating something beautiful." The possibility of it took Sophia's breath away. A future with Jackson, free from the politics and pressures of the fashion world they had both grown to resent. It was tempting, so tempting she could almost taste it. But then she thought of Victoria, of the faith she had placed in Sophia. She thought of the collection waiting to be unveiled, of the dreams she had nurtured for so long. And she knew, with a clarity that was almost painful, what she had to do. "Jackson," she said softly, squeezing his hands. "I love you too. More than I ever thought possible. But I can't run away. Not now. Not when I'm so close to everything I've ever wanted." She saw the pain flash across his face, but to his credit, he didn't pull away. "And after?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "After the show, after you've conquered the fashion world, will there be room for us then?" Sophia felt tears spill down her cheeks as she nodded. "Yes," she said fiercely. "Yes, there will be room for us. There will always be room for us. But I need to do this, Jackson. I need to see it through." For a long moment, Jackson said nothing. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face, a real smile, tinged with sadness but full of love and understanding. "Then I'll be there," he said softly. "Front row, cheering louder than anyone. And when it's all over, when you've shown the world just how incredible you are, I'll be waiting." They came together again, this kiss softer, sweeter, full of promise and hope for the future. When they finally parted, Sophia felt as though a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew she wouldn't face them alone. As Jackson left, promising to see her at the show, Sophia turned back to her work with renewed energy. She had a collection to finish, a world to dazzle, and a future to claim. The day of the show dawned bright and clear, the New York sky a brilliant blue that seemed to mirror Sophia's soaring spirits. As she arrived at the venue, a converted warehouse in the heart of the fashion district, she was struck by the scale of it all. Billboards bearing her name and face loomed over the streets, while a line of eager fashion enthusiasts and industry insiders stretched around the block. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. Models rushed back and forth, makeup artists and hairstylists worked their magic, and harried assistants scurried about with clipboards and headsets. At the center of it all stood Victoria, a general surveying her troops before battle. "There you are," Victoria said as Sophia approached, her voice tight with tension. "Are you ready for this?" Sophia took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle over her. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. Victoria's expression softened for a moment, a flicker of pride crossing her face. "You've come a long way, Sophia," she said quietly. "No matter what happens out there today, I want you to know that I'm proud of you." The words, so unexpected from the usually brusque Victoria, brought tears to Sophia's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." A commotion near the entrance caught their attention. Sophia turned to see Evelyn Hunter sweeping in, a coterie of assistants and photographers in her wake. Their eyes met across the crowded space, and Evelyn's lips curved into a smile that was equal parts challenge and admiration. "Vultures," Victoria muttered under her breath. "Come on, Sophia. Let's get you ready. We have a show to win." The next few hours passed in a blur of final fittings, last-minute adjustments, and pep talks to nervous models. Before Sophia knew it, it was time. She stood in the wings, her heart pounding as she listened to the murmur of the crowd beyond the curtain. "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice boomed over the speakers, "please welcome the debut collection of fashion's brightest new star, Sophia Martinez." The music began, a pulsing beat that seemed to sync with Sophia's racing heart. One by one, the models stepped out onto the runway, each wearing a piece that Sophia had poured her heart and soul into. She watched, breathless, as the crowd reacted, gasps of awe, furious scribbling in notebooks, the constant flash of cameras. And then, finally, it was time for the grand finale. Sophia stepped out onto the runway herself, wearing her masterpiece, a gown that seemed to capture the very essence of starlight and dreams. As she walked, the fabric shimmered and shifted, revealing new patterns and textures with every movement. The crowd fell silent for a moment, as if collectively holding its breath. And then, like a wave crashing against the shore, the applause began. It built and built, until it was a roar that filled the warehouse, drowning out the music and shaking the very foundations of the building. Sophia reached the end of the runway and paused, allowing the audience to drink in the full effect of her creation. Her eyes scanned the front row, finding familiar faces: Victoria, tears streaming unashamedly down her face; Evelyn Hunter, her expression a mixture of awe and calculation; and there, right in the center, Jackson, his face shining with pride and love. As Sophia turned to make her way back, she caught sight of something that made her heart skip a beat. There, tucked away in a corner of the venue, stood a figure she had almost forgotten, the old woman who had given her the golden scissors all those months ago. The woman smiled, nodded once, and then seemed to vanish into thin air. Before Sophia could process what she had seen, she was backstage again, swept up in a whirlwind of congratulations and celebrations. Victoria embraced her, whispering words of praise and pride. The models, many of whom had become friends over the past weeks, swarmed around her, their excitement palpable. But even as she basked in the glow of her triumph, Sophia knew that this was just the beginning. There would be more challenges ahead, more obstacles to overcome. The fashion world was fickle, always hungry for the next big thing. Yet as she stood there, surrounded by the fruits of her labor and the people who had believed in her, Sophia felt a sense of peace settle over her. Whatever came next, she was ready for it. She had proven to herself, and to the world, that she was more than just a nobody from the Bronx. She was Sophia Martinez, fashion's newest star, and her light was only just beginning to shine. Hours later, after the last interview had been given and the final glass of champagne had been drunk, Sophia found herself alone on the empty runway. The warehouse was quiet now, the excitement of the day faded into memory. She sat on the edge of the platform, her feet dangling over the side, lost in thought. Quite a day, wasn't it? Sophia looked up to see Jackson approaching, his tie loosened and his jacket slung over one shoulder. He sat down beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body. "It doesn't feel real," Sophia admitted. "Part of me is afraid I'm going to wake up and find out it was all a dream." Jackson chuckled, reaching out to take her hand. "Trust me, it was very real. You were incredible out there, Sophia. You changed the game today." She turned to look at him, struck once again by the depth of emotion she saw in his eyes. "What happens now?" she asked softly. "Now?" Jackson smiled, bringing her hand to his lips for a gentle kiss. "Now, we celebrate. And tomorrow we start building our future. Together." Sophia felt her heart swell with love and hope. "Together," she agreed. "I like the sound of that." As they sat there, hand in hand, watching the first light of dawn creep through the windows, Sophia knew that this was just the beginning of her story. There would be more challenges ahead, more dresses to design, more dreams to chase. But with Jackson by her side and the memory of that golden scissors in her heart, she was ready for whatever the future might bring. For Sophia Martinez, the girl from the Bronx who had dared to dream, this was not an ending, but a beautiful new beginning. And as the sun rose on a new day, casting its golden light across the empty runway, she smiled, ready to step into the next chapter of her extraordinary life.